I saw something floating around on Instagram that like all of this sorrow can be composted, meaning that all of your rage, all of your sadness, all of your passion is something that we can dump into, imagine like a compost pile, right? We can dump into the ground and grow something from it. That all of this energy, all of this collective energy and collective outrage can be funneled and channeled into an opportunity to affect something beautiful on the other side. Greetings and welcome back to the Kiss My Aesthetic podcast. This episode feels way too timely that I couldn't move on to all the episodes I'm set to record today without sharing my thoughts and giving you all the tools and the resources to be able to continue to speak out against the grave injustice that's happening in this country. And again, it's consuming my every waking thought. And so I can't not talk about it before getting into everything else. So this episode is going to be specifically dedicated to creating activism within your small business, within your entrepreneurship pursuits, within your creative pursuits, and the ways to do that from varying degrees of risk. So I've pulled together a brainstorm. I've got TikTok Live open as we speak. You guys are throwing me ideas there, which I'm grateful for. And I really want this episode to serve as not only maybe inspiration or motivation to say and do something, but hopefully as a resource we can keep coming back to for when we feel stuck. I'm the kind of person that needs to take action when I feel overwhelmed, and the constant consumption of heart-wrenching and heartbreaking news that we're seeing in this country is just absolutely got a fire under my butt to figure out where can I put my time, my tools, and my talents to help make sure that this doesn't keep happening. So that's where this is coming from. If you're someone that absolutely disagrees with me on any stretch of what's going on and maybe having plausible deniability or saying, I don't really do politics or I don't watch the news and I'm not really interested, I need you to recognize first and foremost your own privilege within that and recognize that your complicity in grave social injustice is what is allowing it to continue. So your own privilege and your own comfort, you're now prioritizing over the betterment of the whole. And I need you to take a really hard look in the mirror about that. And already, if you're not liking where this is going, please do not enjoy any more of my content. Please unsubscribe yourself from my YouTube channel, from my social media accounts, from all of those places, because this content is then not intended for your enjoyment. I put out a lot of free resources, free podcasts, free newsletter, free blogs, free things to help the community that gave me so much. And if you're going to take and not hear what I have to say about politics, then this is not intended for you. So no need to announce your departure. It's not an airport. Go ahead, switch this podcast off. You are not hurting my feelings. But for the people that are seeing what I'm saying and posting and understanding what's going on and feeling overwhelmed and feeling lost, this is for you. And I hope that this episode, again, proves to be a reference point and something we can keep coming back to as the world around us feels unshakably scary. And I get the feeling of feeling very small. So again, who this podcast episode is for people who are seeing what I'm posting, seeing what I'm sharing, or seeing what's happening in their own community and seeing what's happening on social media and are feeling like, shit, I really am in knots about this and I don't know what to do. This is who this is for. And what we're doing in all of this is realizing that entrepreneurship is inherently political. Pretty much everything you do is political. And I made a video about this not too long ago. But entrepreneurship and choosing to have a business is in itself political, down to the way that you are taxed, how you conduct your business, who you hire to help with your contracts, your invoices, the clients that you serve, the work that you provide. All of that is political, and your ability to do so is political. So it's a bit disheartening to hear people say like, oh, keep politics out of business, because the reason I am in business as a female as a single person is because of politics, is because of the feminist movement, is because of the fact that women weren't allowed to have their own credit cards until the 70s, weren't allowed to sign on their own house, weren't allowed to have autonomy. The reason I am able to be successful and even be saying all of this and doing all of this is because of generations before me that were able to stick up for the fact that no, this is equality. And this is what equality means to us, is giving everyone an equal shot. And right now, that kind of feels like it is slipping farther and farther away. So, the what we are doing is noticing injustice and taking action via business. And I think we need to vote with our dollars as much as we vote at the ballot box. So, again, the what it is that we're doing is noticing and sticking up for and speaking out against violence and brutality and injustice for the immigrant populations in this country, but also against this entire administration, which has absolute disregard for the foundation of which we all are part of in this country, which is our Constitution, our Bill of Rights. So those getting trampled on are the reason that we're saying and doing these things, because injustice for any of us is injustice for all of us. Like, and to think again that your privilege exempts you from being discriminated against or being treated unjustly, you are wrong. You're wrong. So you can have a good chat with the history books on that one. And the reason why I feel like so moved to be sharing all of this right now with all of you is because of the feeling of like, I'm mad that more people aren't more mad about what's going on. And I think it's partly because of the fact that I choose to stay informed. I choose to stay opted in to the political system. I have been. I always have been. I've said that to you guys since I was in high school. I've been involved. I've always been outspoken. And that also comes with privilege. I have the privilege to do so because I come from a family and from a friend group and from a state that really is aligned with my values in that way. So it is not as risky for me to stick my neck out as someone else, as someone whose parents are deeply politically right or whose partner disagrees with them about politics, where there is more of a threat to your existence as a being, right? When being in opposition is going to cause you harm and security. I can do this because I have the privilege of the fact that I am with people that feel the same way about things that I do. So that I also want to acknowledge just kind of from the jump. But I think, again, for the purpose of the function of this episode and giving you like tactical ideas for how we can start to push back and resist against what's going on, I want to outline some ideas like on a spectrum of like least involvement, least risky, all the way to most risky and involved. So the first one and the first kind of place I come back to is making sure that when these things happen and when there is this real heavy feeling of horrible things happening to our friends, to our neighbors, to our countrymen, to be nationalistic sounding about it, it's to talk with your fellow business owners and your internal support system. As a business owner, you have both the luxury and the privilege, but also the responsibility of making your own rules. You decide when you work, when you sleep, how much projects you take on, how many you don't, where you spend your time creatively. And so a lot of that feels really heavy, and a lot of that can feel really intimidating when you are, for example, like running a team like I am, where I'm responsible for somebody else's salary. I'm responsible for the financial well-being of this organization that now exists beyond me, right? But the first thing to do is really speak to your internal support system and your fellow business owners. And I would even throw in that your team. I have absolute radical candor with my team. Like, we are so out in the open about these things. And especially when it comes to sharing our values, when it comes to talking about projects that we align with or don't align with, when we talk about people taking time off to go protest and be civically involved, that's very much part of the fabric of our company. And that's always been an important part of this company. But I also find that talking to fellow business owners is just as important. So making sure that you've got that network of people that are in the similar phase of life as you, similar scale and size of business as you, and maybe also from different places. I think there's a lot to be gained from talking to people that live in different cities, that live in different states, and how they're handling what's going on, how they're contributing or not contributing, or how they're speaking up or not speaking up, and the risks involved with that. So the first thing is just to be in conversation. So be in conversation with your fellow business owners and your internal support system, your trusted friends, your family, if they're open to it, your advisors, your mentors, the clients that you align with. I've had incredible conversations with clients over the last 2 months about what's going on. And for the clients that we are aligned with, it makes me want to go 10 times harder for them and for their success. So that is a very motivating way to kind of temperature check the situation and figure out like, okay, I'm mad. Who can I talk to? Like, I need to talk to people that get it. And so being able to have those conversations is huge. And reaching out over DMs, I think, is something that's so underrated in that way. The next thing would be posting about it. So I know that, again, posting and sharing can get chalked up as being something that is performative. But I think in the age of social media and information and disinformation, the amplification of resources from legitimate sources is widely helpful. So it's just this within this last month, I heard about the organization fivecalls.org. Fivecalls.org is on the idea that it only takes 5 calls to start to make an impact. It's not necessarily that you have to make exactly 5 calls, but on fivecalls.org, I was able to just plug in my zip code and it spit out the phone numbers for both of my senators and my House of Representatives reps. And I could call them in their DC office and their local office and leave a voicemail. So that's something that was hugely helpful that I found from a resource that was shared on Instagram on an Instagram story or shared on TikTok. So posting about resources or sharing those resources from legitimate vetted sources is a great way to, again, contribute to the at least the information spread of how to start to affect change. The next idea I kind of have for business owners is post about your values. Post about your values, post about your values and post them so clear. Keep them pinned to the top of your page like ours are at all times. And every year we end up coming back to those values and refreshing them and finding ways to say like, okay, what did we not include? What do we want to include? And what do we want to make so crystal clear for anyone finding their way to us, what we stand for? Because if you're going to have a problem with any of that, then do not pass go and do not collect $200 because we're not going to work well with each other if you're in opposition to those values. And values doesn't have to be partisan. Talking about your values and talking about how you think about the environment, immigrants, women's rights, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, gun ownership, gun law, those are not, they don't have to be partisan in the way of just letting people know where you stand. They can pretty much read between the lines. So I would always implore brands to share about their values and live those values and then support the companies that also exhibit those values regularly. So that's a great way to kind of stay plugged in, let the people know, and let it be pretty hard to miss what you stand for. The next kind of suggestion I have here for channeling this like rage and despair into something that feels productive and is productive is to be in community with people that feel similarly. So the strike, for example, I was able to join in on a walk with people in my community and just being outside in the sun with people and seeing the physical manifestation of people that are my neighbors all walking together is something that just makes you feel like, okay, I'm not the only one that's feeling this way. And it doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be contentious and it doesn't have to be, I mean, it was the most peaceful thing you could imagine. I brought my dog. Like it was so chill. There were babies in strollers with signs. Like so easy. Granted, the criticism of that could be like, okay, but what are you really doing? And what we were really doing to me was we were creating a show of force that was pretty hard to ignore. It was pretty hard if you're just driving to go surfing or you're going to, I don't know, the grocery store, you're just driving down the 101. Like you saw at least 100 people walking together with signs, walking together in community and laughing and taking photos and the joy of that resistance of being in community with people who are your neighbors. And I think that that's hugely underrated in times like this. So finding communities that, again, like you feel drawn to that can be that show of numbers, that like physical manifestation of human beings in a consistent effort. And it sounds maybe contrived, or it sounds like, yeah, but what are you even doing? And what I think we did is we disrupted those people who were just going about their regular Friday, and we made them think about it. And we pulled up next to a truck that was flipping us off with kids in their backseat. And I hope those kids get to ask the question, Mommy, Daddy, what are they doing? Right. So it's also just disrupting the regular flow of the regular day and being in people's face, not aggressively, but being out there to be unignorable was part of the point. Right. Part of the point. And also getting those honks and the words of encouragement as well also is like, you know what? Yep, this is my home. These people feel the way that I feel about what's going on. And that is huge. The next, like, pretty low lift, but pretty impactful thing that you can do, and this one maybe even comes before going out and being in community, is calling your senators and congresspeople. Like, calling your representation. Please call your representation. It's so easy. My sister did it literally on speakerphone as we were on the walk, popped that number for Senator Padilla, Adam Schiff, called them up, state your name, state your zip code so that it gets tallied, and basically say how you feel. Say, I elected you. I need you to not only vote in accordance with my values, but I need you to put pressure on your fellow Congress people of what the rest of this country is saying, and start to do your job in DC in the way of like showing that this is not acceptable. So calling your senators, calling your Congress people. I've been calling them every day, all week long, leaving one voicemail each. And, it's a great time. And it's a great way to let your voice be heard and let those voices be tallied. It's something that people don't do enough of. Again, fivecalls.org would be your resource on that. Beyond that, donating to causes that are on the ground doing the work. If you're in the position to do so financially and you can contribute money to organizations that are like the Immigrant Defense Fund, that are on the ground providing legal services to migrants that have been to Americans, to anyone that's been literally scooped off the street by masked men in unmarked vans without due process, that's where you can really make an impact. So again, vote with your dollars, support the businesses that support your values, be a business owner that shares your values, but then take those funds that you've earned and giving them to the people that are doing the work on the ground is imperative. So I will also link the Immigrant Defense Fund in today's show notes. So please click on that. Would definitely recommend. But finding even smaller grassroots organizations in your city, in your state, that are supporting these missions. And that's a big piece of homework that I have for myself is what can I do in San Diego? I'm in a literal border town. I'm in a border town, and I should be plugged in with those immigrant defense funds, with those pro bono lawyers, with the people who are assisting others on their court appearances for their immigration hearings. That's something that I'll call myself out that I could be doing better. Absolutely. The next bit of it is making sure that you're also supporting journalists, and journalists with integrity, and journalists that help you stay informed, journalists that you believe are doing good work, honest work, and are putting themselves out there as uncovering the gross injustice that we are seeing on a regular basis. And thank goodness for them, right? Thank goodness that we all have this piece of documentary equipment in our back pocket called a smartphone, and we can take video and document and share and continue to spread the actual news of what's happening here, and not only relying on channels that are government controlled to give us the message of what's going on and to twist and contort it into a story that feeds their agenda. So making sure we're supporting journalists, Aaron Parnas, Lisa Remillard, Under the Desk News, the podcasters that you enjoy, the media that you enjoy, the people that are doing the research and sharing the news, that is just as much a part of this whole effort as anything else. Because without them, we don't know what's going on. And we deserve to know what's going on. Beyond that, uplifting original first-person stories is also important here. So uplifting stories like Liam Ramos, this 5-year-old child who's now in a detention center in Texas, learning the names of the people like Alex Preddy and Renee Good and their stories, learning about the immigrants that have been absolutely terrorized, learning about the fact that Don Lemon and another journalist out of Georgia have been literally taken into custody by the feds. Like, make that make sense, but doing a good job to uplift original first person stories. And again, I'll call myself out here as well. This is something I could do better. Finding those first person stories of people that have been affected, uplifting them to tell their truth, to share their story is just as important as sharing the resources, sharing your values, and sharing those community events that are happening in your own backyard. So another thing that we can all be doing a better job at is really making sure that those first person POV, those first person stories are getting shared. The next bit of advice, maybe from like less from a social media standpoint and more from a business ownership standpoint, which I'm going to say comes with a bit more risk, which is bringing it up with your clients and encouraging them to speak out. I recorded a video. It's on my Instagram. It'll be linked in the show notes that explains exactly how easy it is to bring it up with your clients and how easy it is to encourage them to also take steps to affect change, to also speak out against injustice. And for us, it looked really simple. It was, hey, client, as I'm sure you've seen over the weekend, things aren't great here. And we are finding it pretty hard to continue business as usual on this Monday, especially given what's happening with ICE, with the government, with this administration, and with the social injustice that's happening around this whole issue. We know that your brand typically doesn't speak out about politics, in which case was true for almost all of our clients, but we really encourage them. Now would be the time to say something. Now would absolutely, I mean, better would have been yesterday and worse would be tomorrow, but today would be a really good day to let your community know where you stand, to share your values, to share resources, to share first person accounts, to share nonprofits that are doing the work, to show not only your community, but to prove to yourself and your own business partners where you're at with all of this. So that was something that our team did after our team meeting on Monday. I kind of ran it by both Cody and Madison. I said, guys, I think it's time that we like bring this up with our clients and encourage them to say and do something. And then at the very least, the ball is in their court. At the very least, we said our thing, and we will always, always, always encourage that people who benefit from social media have a responsibility to speak out about social issues. And that is just my deep, deep, deep core belief. I find it pretty like crass when you see influencers sharing their outfit of the day, their trip haul, their stuff, and have said nothing about what's going on here and how tone deaf that is without acknowledging the tragedy that's happening at the same time is quite odd. And it is also very like dystopian. But to the same point, like, I think there's a way to do both. I think there's a way to speak out about what you know is wrong and also conduct business. Because if we let the oppressor continue to make us feel quiet and feel small about this, and we don't push for our business and we don't stick our neck out there and we don't continue earning an income, it's going to be much more difficult to fight back against that oppressor, if that makes sense. So I think both things can happen at the same time. I think it's a bit telling when there's an account that you follow or that you engage in or you buy from or you support them by clicking on their links, and they're not in turn expressing how they feel about their own people, their own consumer, their own customer base. I find that to be pretty gauche. So again, do that what you will, do with that what you will. Our recommendation again, bring it up to your clients because unfortunately, I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. So this won't be the first time that we're having to remind people that like, hey, now would be a good time to let people know where you're at and what you believe and how you think people should be treated, because that's not even a politics conversation anymore. That's like an ethics and a morals conversation. And on the flip side of that, as a consumer, we can all do a better job of supporting the businesses that support our values. So canceling your Amazon Prime, not shopping at Target, boycotting Hilton, finding those companies and the corporations that continue to not only support this corrupt administration, but to support ICE. and to support ICE in their deportations, to support ICE by housing them, by feeding them, by hosting them, by supporting Donald Trump, by giving a $75 million effort to the Melania movie that nobody wants to go to when Amazon is having mass layoffs. Like, we have to be more educated consumers, because what we avoid is going to keep going. Like, when we don't educate ourselves about who we buy from and when we buy from them, and we don't support local and we don't support small business, and we continue to support corporations that don't have our best interest in heart, all of that continues. So yes, you have to vote. You have to vote when there's elections. You have to vote at the ballot box, but we have to vote with our dollars. And I want to make it so crystal fucking clear where I stand. Like, there should be no mistake about where our team stands on these things, because to me, it is that clear. It is that clear. So bringing it up with clients, encouraging them to speak out, using your own money to support businesses that support your values. Imperative. Cranking on up to like more risk, more based on your comfort level of how you want to speak out about what's going on. Creating original artwork, creating statements, creating videos that put your face and name to the words that you're saying. And I've done this in a way of like, listen, my skills are graphic design. So graphic design in itself is a form of protest. Communication design, visual communications is how we get messages across in our culture. So for me, it looked like designing posters. And so I designed all these posters, and then I created them as an asset that was free to download on my website, free to download, free to use, free to print, free to share, free to distribute, because that's something that I can do. Those are my skills. So I can take a message and condense it and design it and create the graphics around it to make it compelling, to make people pay attention. I'm going to then create an opportunity for people to do the same. Right? So I'm going to encourage and promote and say, here, you don't know what to put on your poster? Here, print it, take it, use it, share it, have it. Because that's not for me to profit on. That's for me to help distribute. So again, the creating original artwork, creating some kind of statement, creating something that not only is, hey, here's our values and where we stand, but like, this is how mad we are. And this is where we're at. And this is what we believe. And to the point of like, I'm going to make something original and contribute to this greater cause. The next bit of this would be taking time to unlearn white supremacy, racism, and misogyny that is so deeply embedded in our culture and in this country. And we cannot be good advocates for change without unlearning our own biases. And I'm a big believer in that. And my big wake up call in that was George Floyd and COVID, and realizing like, oh shit, there's stuff that no one is going to show up at my door and teach me. No one's going to knock on your door and be like, it's time to confront your biases. It's time to confront your own internalized misogyny and your own internalized racism and your own internalized white supremacy. Let's talk about it. Let's go there. And let's make sure that we're finding those resources to learn from and to continue to evolve on our own thinking of inclusion and diversity and acceptance and empathy for other people. And that's something that, again, is like, we can all do a better job at, myself included. I will so call myself out in that. But there are so many creators and resources on this. And I will link in the show notes as well the books that I read back in 2020 that really did make an impact. And if anything, listening to them on audiobooks when you're doing your walks, listening to podcasters of different backgrounds, of different races, understanding the intersectionality of your own benefit of upholding these systems. And I am a straight, cisgender, white woman from an affluent family in Southern California. If I don't think that there are inherent advantages to the luck of me being born in this situation, I'm wrong. I'm so dreadfully wrong. And that doesn't negate the hard work, and it doesn't negate the practice, and it doesn't negate the fact that I've tried, I've worked hard for what I have, but I had a huge head start and I have a huge advantage by the way that I look and I move through the world than my peers. Than my peers who are of different background, who are of different race, who are of different orientation than I am. And that's just a fact. And so it's knowing that, it's unlearning how those biases come forward, and then it's actively finding resources to challenge yourself on your own biases. And again, that's an uncomfy conversation, right? Like, it's an uncomfortable thing to it's uncomfortable to look at yourself in a way of like, oh shit, I could have been doing something that was wrong and I didn't know. Or I could be doing something that continues to be wrong and I'm going to have to call myself out on it. That's something that we have to all make a conscious effort to do if we're really going to look at this thing on the big picture. And then the next evolution of that is starting to engage in conversation with people of other viewpoints. And it reminds me again, we keep coming back to this episode that we had with Hedva Lumir of Considered Labs, where she talked about self-loyalty. And we talked about when you know yourself and you know your values and you know what you stand for, you are so much more unthreatened by other viewpoints because you know where you stand. And you know where you stand and you know what you believe. And so a big part of my own kind of like coming to terms with what's going on is talking to people that feel differently, is trying to understand, is talking to people that I know in my life that voted for Donald Trump and saying, explain this to me. What are you seeing from your side of the street? Where are you coming from? What of what you've seen felt like I was overreacting in 2024 during the election or in 2016? And now where are we? And where do you see this? What's your best case scenario for how we move forward? And really trying to understand that like this comes out of fear. Like I think a lot of where the anger comes from is fear. And I wrote that kind of in my journal this last week of like, I'm scared that my home is not what I thought it was. I'm scared that my future is not what I thought it was. And unironically, I think that's what people on the other side are feeling. I think they feel scared. I think they've pointed at the wrong boogeyman. Absolutely. I don't think it should be the everyday person versus the immigrant. I think it should be the top versus the bottom here. I think it should be all of us against the oligarchy, the bro-oligarchy, the big tech, big corporation is my take. But I think there's something to be said about, can you get to the point in your own unlearning, your own activism, your own outreach, where you feel confident enough that you could enter a situation talking to someone and not let it escalate and guilty as charged because I get passionate and I get fired up about this stuff. And so if I am going to have the conversation with someone, there needs to be like a mutual understanding of my passion or my energy for it is not meant to bully anyone, but it's because I do feel so strongly about it. So how can we find those conversations with people of opposition to make it productive? Because if we're going to build a coalition and we're going to build a big tent and we're going to help march this thing back on track when the pendulum inevitably will hopefully swing back the right way, the way of acceptance and understanding and seeing people as people, that we need to be in a place where we can also say to other people, hey, listen, like it's okay to change your mind. And it's okay to feel differently. And it's okay to say that this isn't what you voted for. And it's okay to say that this is wrong, that this is wrong, because you know that it's wrong, because I know you and I know you're a good person. And so that's, again, the harder things to do that don't have much to do with business, but have a lot to do with how we relate to each other in community and being somebody who is open to having harder conversations with people who feel differently. And that's can be a heavy mental load, but I think it's a worthy one. Lastly, I really would implore all of us, myself included, to get more involved in local politics and in donating your time, treasure, and talent to nonprofit organizations in your local community. So that's also something on my radar. Like I said, this episode is not to be me preaching at anyone. If anything, it's sharing resources and ideas that I've been floating around, but also an accountability. I want you guys to hold me to it, of being involved with more organizations that are affecting social change by using your time, your treasure, or your talent. So it doesn't always have to be your money, but it could be your skills. Are you great at PR? Are you good at project management? Are you good at organizing people? Can you host events? Can you host spaces for people to come together? Can you be involved in getting your local representatives that reflect your viewpoints, getting them elected, helping them with their campaign materials? Like, there's so many opportunities for us to use, especially in the creative field and in the marketing field, to use our talents toward an outcome that we want. And I think that now is the time for that. It seems to be calling for it. So again, also accountability for me here. uplifting more voices, more first-person POVs, uplifting independent journalists with integrity, making sure that I am continuing to unlearn my own biases as much as I'm telling everyone else to, and also getting involved in the local politics side of things by donating your time, your treasure, or your talent to nonprofit orgs. With that, I know this was a doozy. I know that all of us are feeling heavy, angry. I've had that whole range of emotions: sad, depressed, heartbroken, downtrodden. And all of that, I think, is something that I saw something floating around on Instagram that like all of this sorrow can be composted, meaning that all of your rage, all of your sadness, all of your passion is something that we can dump into, imagine like a compost pile, right? We can dump into the ground and grow something from it. That all of this energy, all of this collective energy and collective outrage can be funneled and channeled into an opportunity to affect something beautiful on the other side, to affect that new growth, and what it would look like to put all of that, all those feelings into something that can positively impact the future. So with that, I sign off. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a space for me to yap and say my shit, and know that I will never be shy about saying my shit or yapping, because as of now in 2026, that's my right to do so. I'm hoping it stays that way. Catch you later. If you like this episode, don't forget to send it to a friend. Maybe you feel motivated. Maybe you want to just send me a DM, send me an idea. I am all ears and eyes for us working together on this. So please do not hesitate, and we'll catch you later. Bye.